Whether you want to nail Kirk Hammett's wicked solos or James Hetfield's monster riffs, there's a guitar for you with these two ESP LTD signature models. They have some similarities, but the stark differences are really what make these guitars tailored to their respective guitarists, which is something I didn't quite expect. We're going to see how they compare. I pretty much learned how to play guitar from Metallica's first 5 albums. Actually 7, but don't judge me. This is the first time I've had a chance to try out any of James or Kurt's signature guitars. Big shout out to Zounds for lending me these guitars. Check out the links in the description if you want to pick one of these guitars up. I do get a small kickback, which helps fund this channel. As I said before, both guitars are the ESP LTD versions, so they're made in Korea, not the USA shop. The Snakebyte is one of James Hetfield's custom guitars. It has a very similar body shape to the Gibson Explorer. This one is camo satin and retails for $18.99. The guitar is also available in satin black and snow white, each retailing for $15.99. So you're paying $300 for a camo paint job. Not something I would probably pay for, but if you're into it, go for it. The KHV is Kirk Hammett's latest signature guitar. This one is metallic gold, but it also comes in red or black sparkle. All 3 colors retail for $17.99. Gold wouldn't be my first pick. I'd probably go for the black sparkle. All 3 colors of the KHV have a gloss finish. With the Snakebyte, the camo and black finishes are satin, but it looks like the snow white is gloss. Both these guitars have the back of the necks finished as well. The models with the gloss finish will be a little stickier than the satin finish. Your hand isn't going to get stuck on the neck, but I like the feel of the satin over the gloss. I do prefer an unfinished or lightly oiled neck myself. The finish on both guitars is good. They're not mind-blowing, but the coverage is good and there aren't any flaws that I can see. Both guitars come with hardshell cases, and I do need to say they are ridiculously huge. You'll need to rent a U-Haul just to get these guitars to your gig. Now let's see what these guitars are made of. The Snakebyte has a mahogany body and 3-piece mahogany neck. The KHV, a Carina body and maple neck. Both have stainless steel extra jumbo frets. The Snakebyte with 22 frets and the KHV with 24. The KHV has a white binding on the neck. The Snakebyte does not have any binding. They both have mother of pearl inlays, with the Snakebyte having white dots and a Snakebyte logo at the 12th fret. The KHV has shark fins all the way down the fretboard. The side dots on the Snakebyte are white and the KHV black to contrast against the white binding. The KHV also has a pickguard, which I'm not a fan of. I would have liked to see the controls mounted directly to the body. Looking at the construction and comfort, the Snakebyte is a set neck and the KHV neck through. It's obvious when you look at the neck heels. The Snakebyte makes no effort to reduce the size of that joint. That makes reaching the high frets very difficult. On the other hand, the heel on the KHV is nice and smooth. It makes accessing those high frets a breeze, especially with the additional cutout in the body. The KHV has a 25.5-inch scale, which is pretty standard for this type of guitar, and the Snakebyte is a shorter 24.75-inch scale, which is the standard Gibson scale length. This isn't surprising, as this guitar is based on the Gibson Explorer that Hetfield used to use in the 80s before switching to ESP. I prefer the longer scale on the KHV, but the shorter scale on the Explorer doesn't bother me. But it might be preferred by someone with smaller hands. Looking at the neck profiles, the Snakebyte has a thin U profile, whereas the KHV has an extra thin U profile. There is a noticeable difference in their thickness. I don't know that I would call the Snakebyte neck thin, but I guess it's not a baseball bat. I definitely prefer the size of the KHV neck, but like I mentioned earlier, I prefer the feel of the satin neck on the Snakebyte over the glossy neck on the KHV. The radius on both guitars is 350 millimeters or 13.8 inches. Since the KHV is certainly used more for soloing than the Snakebyte, I would have expected KHV to have a larger 16 or 17-inch radius, but it is what it is. Both guitars have a 42mm or 1 21/32 inch nut width, which is slightly smaller than a standard 1 11/16, but only by a 32nd of an inch. The hardware on these guitars are nearly identical. Both have knurled dome knobs, LTD locking tuners, and a Tone Pros locking tune-o-matic bridge. The only difference is the Snakebyte has a tailpiece and the KHV is string through. The KHV being geared more towards soloing, I would have expected to be equipped with a Floyd Rose or other type of floating trem. As far as playing these guitars, neither of them is really made for sitting down, which I think is obvious. The Snakebyte is a little easier than the KHV, but not by much. With the Snakebyte, you do have the option of holding it in the relaxed or classical position. With a KHV, you can only play it in the classical position. Because of the angle on the V, It will just slide right off your leg if you try to rest it on one leg. Playing it in the classical position is pretty comfortable as long as you have a footrest to lift your left leg up a little bit, or right leg if you're left-handed. You can play the Snakebite in the relaxed position, but because of the lack of forearm bevel, after a few minutes my arm ends up hurting. The guitar is much more comfortable to play in the classical position. However, the output jack at the bottom corner of the body is pretty close to my leg, but it does clear it. That's just something I need to be careful of. When playing these guitars standing up, the difference in weight is obvious. The KHV weighs in at 7.3 pounds, which is pretty standard weight. The Snakebite weighs a whopping 9.8 pounds. It is a beast of a guitar. The weight can be attributed to its larger body size and the fact that it's made of mahogany, which is one of the heavier guitar woods. But weight isn't the only story when playing these guitars standing up. Balance can also affect their comfort. Measuring the weight of each guitar at the strap buttons, we would ideally want a 50-50 weight distribution. That means 50% of the weight is on this front strap button and 50% on the back strap button. Of course, no guitar is perfect. If you look at a typical guitar like my Warmoth Soloist, it has a 66-34% weight distribution with the majority of the weight on the front button. That guitar is comfortable to play standing up and doesn't have any neck dive. The Snakebite has a 70-30 distribution. This is a little worse than the Soloist, but still manageable. Looking at the strap buttons, I would expect the distribution to be worse, but the large, heavy body actually helps counteract their placement. On the other hand, the KHV has a 75-25 weight distribution. This guitar will tend to neck dive a little bit. It's not unmanageable, but it is there. This is due to the lack of any kind of horn for that front strap button. Moving on to the electronics. Both are equipped with a set of EMG active pickups. The Snakebite has Hetfield signature hat set, and the KHV has Hammet's signature bone breaker set. These pickups are distinctly different, which you'll hear shortly. Each guitar has a standard pickup selector, but the pots are different. The KHV has your standard volume and tone controls. The Snakebite does not have a tone control, but rather two volume controls. One for the neck pickup and the other for the bridge pickup. I think the two volume control approach is interesting, but it does have its downsides. I never use my tone control, so getting rid of that is great. When I want to cut the volume, I instinctively go for the first volume control, but if I'm on the bridge pickup, that does nothing. Not a huge deal, but it does take getting used to. When the pickup selector is in the middle position, you can use each volume control to change the blending between the two pickups. But if you turn one volume control all the way down, it cuts both pickups. I would have liked to see a blend knob instead. I'm not sure if that's possible with a pickup selector, but it would have been cool. Since these have active pickups, obviously they both need a battery. Each guitar has a battery cover on the back held down with two screws. I would have liked to see an easy access battery box. Not that you'll need to replace the battery often, but it would have been nice to see. I already mentioned that the jack on the Snakebite is in the bottom corner. The KHV jack is in the top wing and comes out in an angle. The only downside to this, if it is one, is you wouldn't want to use a right angle plug. This isn't a big deal unless you're switching between guitars and you prefer to use a right angle plug on the other guitars. The setup on the KHV is great. The neck has just the right amount of relief and the action is nice and low. The Snakebite setup is okay. The neck also has good amount of relief, but the action is really high. I'm not sure if that's how Jimmy likes his guitar setup, but it can definitely go lower. The intonation on both guitars isn't great. They both fall a little flat on most of the strings, the KHV being a little more out than the Snakebite. It's not something that would be difficult to fix, but it would have been nice to see the intonation be a little better. The overall playability between these two guitars is completely different. The Snakebite is definitely designed for rhythm with the thicker neck, 22 frets, and chunky heel. The KHV is definitely designed for soloing with a thinner neck, 24 frets, and smooth heel. But enough talking, let's see how they sound. Overall, the Snakebyte is aggressive. The bridge pickup has a substantially higher output than the neck. I had to lower the volume of the clean tracks with the bridge pickup and neck bridge combo, so they weren't overwhelming. The KHV is still strong, but a little subdued compared to the Snakebyte, but it's nice and smooth when soloing. I really expected to like the Snakebyte neck pickup more for clean, but I prefer the KHV neck pickup. I don't use active pickups very often. One of my first guitar upgrades was a set of EMG 81 and 85s, but about 15 years ago, I went back to passives and haven't turned back. In my opinion, EMGs sound good, but they sound like EMGs. To me, passives tend to have more character. Again, these pickups sound great, they just wouldn't be my first choice. If I were to pick one of these guitars, I would go with the KHV, but I would like to see an unfinished neck, no pickguard, and easy access battery box. The Snakebyte is not a guitar for me, but it is a great option for a rhythm player. Like the KHV, I'd like to see an easy access battery box, but I'm cool with no tone control. But hey, until next time, rock on.